Hello and welcome to another live English lesson on the AM language channel with me, Richie. Where I am in the world, I'm feeling a little bit cold, so I'm wearing this woolly jumper to keep me warm. Hope where you are warm, and if you are in Malta, well, you would be enjoying a very sunny day because it is nice and sunny in Malta at the moment. Where I am in the world, it is definitely not sunny. It's a little bit cloudy. So I hope you're all doing well today. Welcome to the channel. What can we say about today? Well, it's conversation day. And today we are going to develop our range of English when it comes to changing conversation, phrases to develop conversation. So this is where you're talking to some people, and it's important that the conversation keeps on moving in order for the conversation to continue. If you don't move the conversation along, the conversation might stop, and that's not what you want. So that is the target for today. If this is your first time, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and or don't forget to always like that button to like the video. Let me know who is watching. On this Thursday afternoon. So we'll give people a bit of time before we start the lesson. Hopefully my connection is good. I think only one day this week it was bad. The other days so far it's been pretty good. So Arena F, hello, good afternoon. As always, welcome to the lesson. Leondina, you too, welcome to the lesson, and thank you for joining. Buon pomeriggio. Roberto, you too, good afternoon. Marta as well. Roberto says, actually, I'm attending morning lessons in AM from home, waiting for my COVID-19 test result. Yes, to those of you who are taking a COVID-19 test, I wish you the very best of luck. I hope you are all well and safe. This is obviously one of the problems at the moment with COVID-19. It only takes one person to catch COVID, and all of a sudden you've got problems. It could be someone in your flat. It could be someone at work, at school, for example. It certainly is a difficult period. Marta says, Roberto, are you flatmate to Viviana and other students? That's a pretty good question. Marta Poggio, it sounds like you know something that I definitely don't. Evelina, good afternoon. Welcome to today's lesson. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you're doing well. Buon pomeriggio as well. So, let me just try and get into a more comfortable position. So, let's begin. So, when it comes to phrases to try and keep the conversation going, these are really important and useful phrases that can make a really big difference. Let's see. Roberto says, Marta, I'm not with a student. Oh, right, Marta. Okay, thank you for letting me know. 4 students in that flat. Okay. Okay, so within that same flat, yeah, if 4 students are together, or if 4 people are together and one person gets it, then obviously it's a potential problem. Okay. Anyway, let's get on with today's lesson. So, conversations. Continuing the conversation. So let's have a little look at some phrases. We'll work in terms of both things that follow naturally on and things whereby it can also be a little bit funny. So the first thing, obviously, is that you can go with is you've got person A, person B, and then person A again. Okay, so this is our first example of a phrase that we can use to change the conversation. And it's very simple, change of conversation. So that's phrase number one, change of conversation. I think sometimes it's not a bad idea to add in well necessarily. I think that could sometimes be a good idea. But that clearly tells you that you are now going to change the conversation. You're going to change topic. So that's number one for you guys. Number two, and I'm going to give you another example over here. Okay, so the next phrase that we can go with is speaking of. This is quite an important one. When you go with this, you're saying there's some kind of connection. So you are changing the conversation, but you're picking on something specific in your previous conversation to change the direction of the conversation. So this is speaking of X, whatever X may be. So you could be having a conversation with someone about food, and the person says, "Yeah, so the food was good." Yeah, so you would say, sorry, let me start again. So you would say, so the food was good, as like a question. The person says, yeah, I would say. And then the next person would say, hmm, well, speaking of good food, because that was kind of the idea of the topic, have you tried? So you now take the conversation into a different direction, and it works in lots of different ways. The thing that you need to do here is you need to focus on a specific something specific about that previous conversation that you can use to change the direction of conversation, to change the focus, um, in order to make the connection. And speaking of is a really good one. Um, Next one that you can go with, and we'll then enter like an actual conversation, but I just want to give you about four ones that you can go with. So let me show you with the next one, person A. I'm going to use the same examples in terms of conversation because it's just quicker and it's easier for you guys to see how this works. This one here, quite a good one, really similar to the first one. We've got well on a different note. Okay, so number 3, on a different note. So again, this is one that you can use. You can really change the topic of conversation. You don't need to stick with even closely to that conversation. You can really change things up there. So that's a really good one. I think I'm going to give you one more for now. Let's go for one more. And then if there's an opportunity, I'll continue. So let's go for one more. And I'm going to go with this one here. This is the fourth one I'm going to show, and this will be the last one for now. This is the funny one. Okay? This is the funny one. And it's this. Well, you know what's not related to. So this is a funny one because you're quite clearly saying you are changing the conversation, but you're going to change it in such a way that the next topic of conversation has absolutely no link whatsoever to the previous conversation. So you've got these four, and we're now going to have a little exercise where you guys are going to choose which phrase would make the most sense within the context, okay, that I provide. So just to make sure we just remember, we've got the first one is, well, change of conversation. 2, speaking of X, whatever the connection is, a specific subject. It could be taste, it could be drink, who knows what it could be. 3, on a different note, this is really similar to number 1. And finally, number 4, which is just really random. It can be quite funny. And this is when you go, well, and you've got to say it in a certain way. So you would say, well, you know what's not related to your dinner experience? Dinosaurs. What do you think? So number 4 is potentially a funny one that you can use, but you have to feel confident that you can say it with the right sort of humor. You need to show that you're being funny, but changing the conversation. Um, no is missing, I think. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, yes, it is. Sorry. Yes, you're quite right. I've missed out. No, thank you. Thank you, Roberto. Yeah, I missed out no. So, well, you know what's not related to whatever it is. Yes, don't forget no. That is important. So, those are the 4 examples. I'm now going to give you some context sentences, and you guys need to choose between 1, 2, 3, and 4 in order to complete the change of conversation. That's what we're going with. Okay, I'll give you a little clue on the side. So I might say, for instance, if we're looking at A, sentence A, for example, it might be, I'm going to say sentence A as my example. You would say something like, so you'd see something like the pizza delivery was terrible. In brackets, I might put something like, change the direction of conversation. So then you would link it to the answer. And in this case, the answer would be, and you would link it to this. Speaking of a poor service, I had a terrible experience, blah, 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 whatever it might be. But you would there be, because I put in brackets, change the direction of conversation rather than completely change conversation. That tells you that you need to go with speaking of and whatever the subject is. So let's have a go and we'll see how you guys get on. So, A. Okay. B. Okay. C. And D. And D. So you've got A, B, C, D, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, in some cases, you could go with two of these. You could use at least two different answers, but we'll see what you guys go with, and we'll go from there. So the film was really boring, and I didn't enjoy it. In brackets, we've got change the direction of conversation. B, and the TV just wouldn't work. Completely change, in brackets, completely change conversation in a funny way. C, and that's why the flight was uncomfortable. Brackets, change the topic of conversation politely. And this is also the same in D, where it says, so yeah, I just feel down today. So then you're going to change the conversation politely. So tell me which ones you think best go with the others. It's not to say that you can't use all of them in some sort of way, but we want to try and pick ones that are perhaps most appropriate based on what I've put in brackets. Okay, so we have to think of the brackets. Sandra, guten Tag, good afternoon. Thank you for joining the lesson today. So you've said A, well, change of conversation. Have you watched the new series on Netflix? Okay, we'll see if you are correct. Um, with A. If you agree with Sandra, let me know. By the way, guys, I mean, all of you are going to get some. You're not necessarily going to be wrong on any of these, but there are some which are better suited. Let's put it that way. They connect things better. So let me know what you guys think. Sandra has kindly given us her answer for A. Roberto says A, well, on a different note, or speaking of films, that would be films. Have you ever heard of the new movie directed by Steven Spielberg? Okay, Roberto, thank you for giving me two answers. We'll see which one might be the best one between those two. So we have an idea of A. Let me know what you guys think of B. Leodina has gone for, speaking of a boring film, yesterday I saw a dull one. Okay. For B, she said, well, you know what's not related to your TV. C, she's gone with, well, on a different note. And D, well, change of conversation. Thank you very much, Leondina, for your full answers. We'll see what other people come in with. If you agree with Leondina, let me know that you agree with her. If you have any other answers, let me know as well. But we've got off to a pretty good start here. And then what we're going to do is we are going to actually try and have a conversation. And we are going to try and actually use these with a proper conversation in the live chat. And the task is how many times can you change the conversation? So that's the activity that we're going to do together in a short while. Roberto says that for B, well, change of conversation. What's the last book you have read? Okay. We'll see if you are correct. Oh, no, he's changed his mind. Okay, well, I'm going to give Roberto a bit of time as he changes his answer. After this as well, I'll give you some more examples that you can use in order to keep the conversation going, because there's quite a few ways that we can do it. I mean, I've only given you 4 ways that you can do it, but there are quite a few ways to do this in English. Most of the time, it's just, listening for something in that conversation that you can take and use. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for that, that little topic, or that's something mentioned that you can then take and you can run with, basically. Roberta says B is, well, you know what's not related to that. Let's play a game. Okay, Sandra says Leondina's answers sound really good. Okay, well, I'll tell you what the correct answers are. Okay, so the answers. A, speaking of a boring film. Yes, this yesterday I saw a dull one. That's good. I would go with that. So Leondina's answers were good here. The reason why you've gone for speaking of a boring film is, if you look in brackets, you've got changed the direction of the conversation. So don't forget, it doesn't mean you are completely changing the topic. You are still talking about a film. You are still talking about entertainment, but you're changing the direction. And that's why this is a good one. Speaking of TV series, speaking of films, speaking of history, speaking of food, whatever it may be. But this is a really good one to know. B, well, you know what's not related to your TV series, your TV problem. What was it? Yeah, well, you know what's not related to your television not working, and then you come out with something completely different. In the context of what we're looking for, yes, this is very good, because you are in brackets. It says completely change conversation in a funny way, and this would be a funny way of changing conversation completely. C, you've got well on a different note, and D, well, change of conversation. Now, C and D can interchange. with one another, because they both are really similar. They do the exact same thing. You're telling the person that you're going to change conversation. And it's very good in formal settings. Okay, so let's move on to the next task. The next task is synonyms, okay? Which are the best synonyms to speaking of? Okay? Which are the best synonyms to speaking of? Let's see what you guys go with. Okay, B. Okay, yes. Let's go with that. You've got these three options. Which ones, or which one do you think is the best synonym of speaking of? With apples and pears, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. B, going back to what you said earlier, and C, it's funny you should mention this because now this is whatever is to do with the conversation, the subject, the main subject, perhaps, or the underlying subject. Which one do you think? Sorry, I'm really sorry. I don't know why I'm yawning. Which one do you think is the best one? So Roberta has gone for C. You know, I think I need some water. Leodina says B and C. Okay, I'll give some people a bit more time. Maybe we can get one more answer. Both of you have mentioned C. One of you mentioned B. I will talk about B. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And Marta says B and C. Okay, the answers are, you can go with B and C. Now, C is a direct synonym in the sense that it's funny you should mention Friends, because I've started to watch a series called How I Met Your Mother and blah blah blah. Okay, so there you can find the relationship. It's a closer one. B, yes, but this is not direct. When you use B, it's, for instance, the person has mentioned 5 different points, and you are going, yeah, the person's mentioned 5 different points, and you've spoken about those points, but you want to go, but later, sorry, later you want to go back to one of those points. So it is very similar, but at the same time, it's slightly different. You want to go back to it. So let's say you and I have had a conversation, and in this conversation, we have spoken about apples, pears, oranges, and tomatoes. We've discussed each topic a little bit. And just when we think maybe the conversation might end, I want to continue one conversation about tomatoes because I've just remembered something. So to make this connection, I can say, well, going back to what you said earlier. So that is a really good one to know. So now we're going to have a go. We're going to have a go at trying to have a conversation. Now, how does this work? We are going to have a conversation, okay? And whenever I post this emoji, okay, it means you all have to try and change the conversation in some sort of way, okay? So we could be talking about, let's say we could be talking about the weather, okay? You guys in the chat section might be saying the weather is great today. Someone might say, yes, but tomorrow the weather is going to be bad. I will then post this, okay? And you guys have to change the conversation. So you guys then might say, on a different note, are you thinking of going to Valletta this later today, for example? So the emoji with the sunglasses means change of conversation, and we're going to have a conversation about something, and we can all take part. And whenever you see this emoji, it means you guys have to try and change the conversation. And I will pick one of your ideas, and we will go with that idea. I haven't tried this before on YouTube. In class, it would work very well. It's meant to be a speaking activity, but we can't do that. So let's have a go at going with this one, and we'll see where we get to. Okay, so I'm going to start the conversation, and you guys can go with you guys can then run with it and give me your thoughts, but look out for this look out for this emoji. So I'm going to start the conversation by saying, is it a good idea to eat pizza every week? So that's my opening question. You guys can come in, give me your thoughts. And once we've got a few people coming in with their thoughts, I will then post that emoji. That means you all have to try and change the conversation in some sort of way. Let's see what you guys do. Come in with your actual opinions. I've asked a question. Is it a good idea to eat pizza every week? Let me know what your thoughts are on that question, and then we'll go with it. And we'll try and change the conversation as we go along. I suppose you can call this, if this was in a classroom, this would be an activity called Hot Topic. So the topic is always changing in order to activate this. So Leondina has said yes. In my opinion, it's always a good idea to eat pizza. Okay, we'll see if some other people can come in with their own opinions, and then we'll continue the activity. We need more than one person to give their thoughts on whatever the topic that we are talking about. Yes, in my opinion, says Leondina, that it's always a good idea to eat pizza. I love pizza, so I'm going to say yes to this. I think having pizza once a week is a good idea. Having said that, I am quite picky about pizzas, in the sense that it's got to be good. It's one of the best things ever made, and not having I think having a disappointing pizza is just it just ruins your day. It's like a bad cup of coffee or a bad cup of tea. It's terrible. Okay, Evelina has come in and said, I agree with Lee and Dina. Okay. Okay, try and change conversation. We're just having a conversation about pizza. Roberto says, I think it is. Speaking of food, don't forget to add some fruits in your meals. Okay, so Roberto automatically here has gone with speaking of food. So that's a good phrase that you use to change the direction of conversation. And now you're talking about fruits in your meals. I'm going to ask, what type of meals are you talking about? Do you mean salads or mains, really? Um, so feel free to answer that question, Roberto. If someone else would like to come in and change the conversation in a slightly different direction, you're welcome to. But Roberto was the first one here to change the conversation here. I think it is. Speaking of food, don't forget to add some fruits in your meals. I've asked, what type of meals are you talking about? Do you mean salads or mains? If you like, you can answer that question, Roberto. If anyone else would like to come in, you can do as well. If I, yeah, we'll see what you guys come out with here. I mean, look, fruits. The thing about fruit is that fruit on its own can be a little bit boring. That's why a fruit salad, for example, is more, well, it just looks better. I quite like to add fruit to salad, and I think even certain dishes, certain types of fruit are really good to add to main dishes. But it depends on the dish. I think white meat, it might go slightly better with white meat. Okay, right. We're taking a bit of time, so I'm going to suggest that we change the conversation again. Theodina says, speaking of pizza, I have to say I'm very lucky as my husband is a pizza chef. Leondina, that is really lucky. That is extremely lucky that your husband happens to be a pizza chef. I take it that you have a proper pizza oven. Yeah, you must eat really good pizzas. Roberta says, well, on a different note, you can have fruit like both oranges and kiwis after in the end. You probably don't need in the end. You don't need even after, to be honest, Roberta. You could have ended it with just with kiwis. Okay, cool, excellent. So speaking of, so we're on to this. I'm going to do this actually, guys. I want you now to really change the conversation. I want you to completely change topic. Roberta says, I remove after. Yeah, you don't need after or in the end. Just you can end with kiwis, Roberta. So, guys, I've asked you to change the topic again, but this time I want you to really change the conversation. Nothing related to food. Let's see what you guys can come out with. A really big change of conversation. Let's see what phrases you come out with to do that. And then we'll go from there. We're coming up to about 5 minutes left of today's lesson. Actually, you know what? It is getting to that time of day where I think it's definitely looking like it could be a good time to have a cup of tea. I haven't had a cup of tea today, which is a serious mistake. As an Englishman, not having a cup of tea is it's it's just a bad idea. It's terrible. It's really bad. Everyone needs that. If you're an Englishman, English woman, you've got to have a cup of tea. I think that's an absolute must. Okay, guys, so I'm waiting for you to change the conversation completely. Come in with something that is totally different to food. Pick one of the phrases that we've looked at. You can try and go for something polite. You can go for something maybe on the funny side of things. Let's see what you guys come out with to change the conversation. We're looking for something that is a bit stronger than speaking of something, because we've been talking about food. So don't come in with something to do with food. I want you to completely change the direction. So Leondina says, change of conversation. I like to let you know that I enjoy English lessons on YouTube. Thank you very much, Leondina, for that excellent answer and that very kind post. Sandra says, well, change of conversation. How is the situation at the moment with coronavirus in Malta? That's a really good way of doing it. So you've both gone for change of conversation. Well done. What's the situation like in Malta? I don't know really the answer. I know that they've recently said that restaurants cannot remain open after 11. I don't know, to be honest, what the situation is. I know that it's still quite relaxed. People are wearing masks. I think they're trying to keep as many things open as open as possible. But I don't really know what they're doing at this point. I'm probably the worst person to ask. I've come up with this thing actually at the moment, whereby I am no longer looking at the news. I don't want to look at the news. I find looking at the news in general is just too depressing. It's not good for the mental health. So I don't look at the news anymore. I get my news from I think I get my news from two people. I get my news from the director of AM Language, Lorraine, and I get my news from my dad as well. I'm happy to hear people tell me about the news, but I don't want to look actually at the news anymore. Marta says today the measures have changed. Roberta says, well, you know what's not related to you're just missing something there, like related to it, related to pizza, related to the coronavirus. You just need to finish off by mentioning the previous subject. Okay. To food. Okay, that makes sense. I need to do some exercise unless I will need to do some exercise. Instead of unless, you want to go with exercise. Otherwise, I will become. Otherwise, I will definitely. If you're going to use this adverb, it has to come after your modal verb. Okay. Definitely, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So what you were looking for, the linker there, Roberto, is otherwise, not unless, otherwise. If you don't do X, because you're saying, I need to do X, otherwise Y will happen. Okay, guys. Well, excellent. Really well done. And that takes us to the end of today's lesson. Really well done. And I thought that activity went quite well as well. I mean, look, this is difficult to do on YouTube in the live chat section. I mean, if were in a classroom, a physical classroom, this would be quite good. It's easy to do. On live chat on YouTube, well, that's a bit harder, but you guys made it work. So thank you very much. A big thank you to Roberto, Marta, Sandra, Leondina, Irina F, Evelina, and anyone else who has participated in today's lesson and who has been watching. So thank you very much. I will be back tomorrow at the same time, as always, with the topic of, if I just remind myself what I'm doing tomorrow. The subject for tomorrow is going to be stuck for words. Keep the conversation going. So here we'll be looking at keeping the conversation going, except this time you've run out of words. You're stuck on a word. You can't think of the word. Oh dear. Okay, and for that we probably need to go into some topics. Marta says, thanks, Richard. You're welcome. Sandra says, thank you, Richard. You're welcome. Irina F says, thank you, Richard. Have a lovely evening. You too, Irina F. Roberto, thank you, Richard. Have a great evening. You too. Leondina, thank you, Richard. Have a nice evening and see you tomorrow. Thank you, Leondina, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And Evelina, have a good evening and see you tomorrow as well. So everyone take care. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed the lesson, and I'll be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock with another live AM language lesson. Thank you and bye for now.